coming to you worldwide on the iHeart Radio Network. The number one network in the United States of America is iHeart Radio, and also Big C Sports has been rated the number one sports show in the universe, Big C, because we're the only show in the universe that does it freestyle. That means no teleprompters and no microphone in our ear, Big C. And also I want to say thank you to all of our Latin American listeners. So bienvenidos to you. Thank you so much for following Charlton and Big C Sports, as well as across the pond in Paris, France, and London, England. Thank you also for following Charlton and Big C Sports. And, of course, the good old boys from Canada. Now, I spent all my weekend, Big C. I've been focusing on this. I'm going to give it a couple of more lines. Oh, Canada, our home and native land. And something about our God and thee. My goodness, I get nervous. I get stage fright, Big C. Canada, please, I apologize. But there's no one I love more than the land of the free and the home of the brave. And that's your good old boys down south, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys, Big C?
Well, Charlton, I think they've had the Grammys already, and so we don't have to worry about you being nominated this year.
Oh, man.
I mean, you got some time to practice and brush up, but I think a Grammy's already been won for that song. But, Canada, I apologize for my partners, in Institute for his vocabulary.
I'm trying, Big C.
But, good thing everything down south, is not as bad as you're singing, We won't worry about you being in the opera anytime soon.
Oh, man, that's funny, Big C. I'm sorry, Canada, but I love you. That's why I keep trying to master it, Big C. So how's it going for you good old boys, Big C?
We're enjoying everything down here, Charlton. Just a marvelous weekend of football this past weekend. Some races got real tight where the last season of the NFL season will put a couple teams into the playoffs, mainly Detroit, Green Bay, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore. Those four teams will be playing on that final Sunday of the season for one of those teams to play in and one to be watching. But, just a marvelous time. The bowl season has started in college football, and, just looking forward to all this cold weather. Winter will be here in a couple of days, and it's freezing already.
I think she's already showing up in California. It's freezing out here, man. It got down to like 48 degrees, Big C. I don't know what people in California are going to do, but I also want to say today is a beautiful December the 19th, 2016, and this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard for the road. And when you go by and test drive one, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. And Big C, I think you have the only Escalade that can remain muddy even in the snow down south, Big C. How's it working out for you in the snow and the mud, Big C?
Well, Charlton, when you're in the big everything is smooth. We turn on the windshield wipers. As long as we can see out the front and back, we'll crank down that driver's side window and look out the side. We don't worry about the rest of the condition of the car. People know who Big C is rolling down the road.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I'll tell you another thing. It deflects radar from the highway patrol, so don't worry about it.
But you guys always drive the speed limit, so who's concerned about the highway patrol? That's only for guys that don't drive the speed limit, Big C. I don't think you have a problem with that, do you, Big C?
Well, I really don't look at the gauges that much, Charlton. I'm looking for things that might dash in front of the car as you're driving down some of those back streets or something, Charlton. We got a lot of game and wildlife down here, so you have to dodge those from time to time.
That is so funny, Big C. I just want to say, number one, there's a lot of good sports happening in Northern California. And number one, we were talking about just last Friday down at Team Alpha Male and Uriah Favor's gym in Northern California. UFC Mixed Martial Arts Fighter has a great gym. A lot of great fighters down there working out of that gym. But I also want to congratulate Uriah Faver for the UFC Fight Night on Fox at the Golden One Center in downtown Sacramento facility. He had a big fight, and he won it over the weekend with Brad Pickett, and that was a co-main event, Big C. And Uriah Faver just really impressed with that young man. He's done so much for Northern California fighters, and it's a good time for this business and this industry. I know that Dana White, he's kind of the Don King of the UFC, or he's done everything right. Took a $2 million investment, turned it into $4 billion. A lot of great fighters, and also another great event was Paige Van Zant. She was actually defeated by Michelle Watterson in the main event, Big C, and again, that was on Fox Sports. But just great competition, a sold-out crowd at the Golden One Center. And Big C, I know it's big out here. Is the UFC big and MMA down south, Big C? Is that a big thing down south, Big C?
Well, Charlton, it's become big across the United States. I mean, from California to New York, it has played from coast to coast. And, just drawing record crowds wherever it is. The home of it basically is Las Vegas because it's the entertainment capital of the world. But the UFC, Charlton, wherever it goes, people gravitate to it because they know there's going to be nothing but excitement and intensity through those entire events, Charlton. It's one of those things that you don't lean back and say, hey, these guys are being slugs out there. No, they're slugging it out with each other because there's no holds barred. And the entertainment dollar is so tight nowadays for people trying to get to. Is that when you go to an MMA event, Charlton, you're going to get the full value of your investment. As they would call the ROI, return on investment. Yeah. You get all of that at an MMA event, Charlton.
I tell you, there's some great fighters, and what I learned about just that world of MMA, these guys, they eat right, Big C. They work out all the time. I met the gentleman. I actually did an interview. His name is DJ. He goes by the name of DJ, and he's a California Muay Thai state champion. This guy has about 4% body fat, African-American boxer, just a great athlete, and he talks about how he eats and how he trains. So that's a great business for guys who like to get hit upside the head, Big C, which I might want to stay out of Canada for a while because if I start singing the national anthem, if I don't improve, I might start facing that same type of treatment, Big C. But I just want to say congratulations to all of the fighters, and especially Sacramento for making Northern California the mecca of the UFC, even just for the weekend. I know most people go down to Las Vegas, but when you get a chance to see the Golden One Center, I think they'll have a lot more fights coming to Northern California. Also, Big C, as we get into the world of football, I just had a great idea, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I think if we go ahead and bench Dak Prescott and start Tony Romo, I think the Cowboys will have a better shot at the Super Bowl. So we'll touch more on why I think that's the case, Big C, me and Jerry Jones. But before that, Big C, I just want to say, I want to ask you before we get down into the world of football, do you know we've already had, I think, 4 or 5 college football playoff games, or not playoff games, but bowl games, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, with 41 bowl games on the slate, it's just way too many. Now, they talk about how these games matter. I think the games matter more to the university as far as the money grab than anything else. You think about starting college bowl games, Charlton, just as classes are ending for Christmas vacation, when families are trying to get together and get back and forth across the country. And that's a large revenue grab, trying to get, especially for college students, trying to get back home, family. This is a great time of the year for families. And to have so many bowl games set up, periodically throughout the weeks. What are we on today, Charlton? Monday?
Yeah.
And there was a bowl game today on Monday, first day of the work week.
Yeah.
And so the average American has to go to work. You don't have time to sit around and watch these games that are slated all throughout the week. I mean, it's just overkill when you get into it, Charlton. And this is what it's about to boil down to. Within the next 4 to 5 years, Charlton, it will be down to 8 to 10 games, period. It's going to go back to where it was back in around 1970, 71, where you only had 8 to 10 bowl games in total. Not even 8 games, Charlton. Well, when you think about it, what's going to happen is that the playoff series is going to expand to 8 teams. It's going to go there. Then you're going to have 4 fiduciary bowl games outside of that, because what's going to happen is what you just saw with Leonard Fournette and McCaffrey out of Stanford. Is that you're going to get these key players in, hey, these bowl games mean nothing but a money grab for the university. I'm not going to get paid. I'm giving you all I can on my time with the university as a player. You've made as much money off of me as you can. Now it's time to protect myself for my future. Charlton, we've seen so many top-rated players over the past decade injured in these bowl games that has cost players millions of dollars in draft slating. Where they may have been a first-round draft pick, Charlton, where they've fallen to the 6th, 7th round because of an injury. People knew the talent was there, but they didn't want to take the chance on the potential risk. So this is what you have to slate yourself at when you're looking at these bowl games. Any fan out there who turns on whatever network these games are on and sit there and you see a stadium that's 80% empty, you got to ask yourself, even as the person turning on the television dial, where's the interest in this game? If they can only put 80% television. Charlton had a blowout today with Tulsa beating Western Michigan, I believe it was 55-10.
Yeah, wow.
55-10 in a meaningless bowl game. So people look at that and they say, there's no interest because the game is not competitive.
Yeah.
You're sending teams too far back and forth across the country. Who's going to get out of Michigan this time of the year to go to Florida, Charlton?
Even if you can get a flight out of Michigan, Big C, that's one of the hardest parts. Just being able to travel with that type of thing. But we know it's a money grab. And just talking about some of the college games, we had Grambling that started on December 17th. They were 11-1. Now they had a 10-9 win over North Carolina Central. New Mexico with a 9-4 record, 23-20 over Texas San Antonio in the New Mexico Bowl. In the Las Vegas Bowl, San Diego State, their gentleman, their running back, set a record for rushing Big C. That was 34-10 over Houston. Remember earlier in the year, Houston was having a lot of talk of being in the Final Four in the Camellia Bowl in Montgomery, Alabama. Big C, Appalachian State 31-28 over Toledo, and then you have Arkansas State over Central Florida 31-13. Arkansas State came in with an 8-5 record, Big C, in the Cure Bowl, and then the New Orleans Bowl had Southern Miss at 28-21 winner over Louisiana Lafayette, and playing right now Tulsa and Central Michigan are playing right now, Big C, in the Miami Beach Bowl from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Central Michigan. So hopefully they'll have a lot of fun with that game, Big C. But I want to jump right into the heart of the Lion. Right now you have the NFL shaping up for the playoffs, and as we get into that, I want to say this segment is sponsored by your California Lottery. What can a buck do for you? I keep trying to keep doing this lottery thing, Big C, and I keep praying. I guess they say you keep praying until you hit it, right? So I'm just doing what the Bible says. I'm keep praying, and hopefully some of that money will go in my bank account eventually. But you still playing a lotto, Big C, or are you overindulged on moonshine, Big C? Your thoughts?
I like that consistent thing of moonshine. I'll dabble in a little lottery periodically, but I like that steady flow, and that's what that liquid brings for me. That steady flow.
Liquid lotto, huh?
Yes.
You're guaranteed to get what you're looking for with that liquid lotto, Big C. But just want to get back into one of the most exciting weekends of the National Football League, and you had so many great setups happening from all, and this is what I really want to ask you before we get into these games. For all of the national media, I mean, every single station, and I know sometimes if you go opposite to the mainstream, maybe it pays well, Big C, because people like controversy. But can you tell me why anybody who was watching the National Football League would have any type of thought as to why they should bench a guy like a Tony Romo, Big C? Go ahead, Big C, your thoughts on that?
Well, Tony Romo's job is sitting in the league. I mean, you talk about Dak Prescott. You want to bench Dak Prescott? Why? That's like saying we're going to bench Aaron Rodgers, we're going to bench Matt Ryan, we're going to bench Drew Brees. Charlton, this is a young man who's far exceeded all expectations. But that's what the growth of the National Football League is all about, exceeding expectations. That's where we get our stars from, Charlton. That's where they're born. And no other quarterback has had the pressure of a Dak Prescott, especially after winning 11 games going into last night's game, Charlton.
Yeah.
That hear this talk, this whisper, not a whisper, but a yell, a call of arms, basically like, hey, let's get this young black guy out of here, get his old white guy a chance. And basically that's all it is, Charlton. It's nothing more than that. It's like, well, Tony Romo's been around here all these years. Now Dallas got a great team. He can't be the quarterback. Well, that's the reason why they have a great team, Charlton. He's not the quarterback. You have to face reality as far as the national media. You can't go around kissing that ex-girlfriend all the time.
No.
You might get in trouble by the current boyfriend.
Sometimes they call that on the down low. Keep it on the down low. Nobody has to know, Big C. Just let you know, some guys don't mess Donald Trump up. Don't mess up his game, Big C.
Well, this is quite obvious what has occurred in Dallas.
Yeah.
Every time Prescott has a great game, Charlton, like last night, he had the second highest rating behind Rich Gannon as far as completions in a game. Completion percentage for over 30 attempts. And Gannon did that some 14 years ago, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, you look at what he did on the national stage last night, Charlton, against an excellent Tampa defense. That he went out there and he did what he did to quiet, all the critics. Even though they're not quiet, Charlton, they're still trying to find kinks in his armor. Yeah. I mean, what other quarterback
fall back but I understand your point, Big C. Go right ahead.
But no one said Tom Brady didn't throw a touchdown, even though they won in Denver. But Dak Prescott, that was a knock on him last night. He didn't score. He didn't throw a touchdown pass. Charlton, you win the game by whatever means possible. He ran a touchdown. He didn't get credit for that. Elliott had 159 yards rushing. That is set up by Zach's performance, so Charlton, you got to look at it. Yes, he's a tremendous running back, but when the defense can't sit there and pack the line of scrimmage because you got a quarterback basically completing everything that he throws, you can't sit there and say, well, it's just the offensive line. Yes, the offensive line is a critical part of it, but you think about it. You got the quarterback with savvy, mobility, and arm strength, and touch, Charlton. So he has the entire package, and people are trying to say this old cripple guy that hasn't played football in over a year, hasn't won a game in a year and a half, is a better option for the team with the best record in the NFL.
Well, I think you're 100% right on that, Big C. Another thing that Dak has going against him is the ownership in Jerry Jones, and of course people can hang out with who they want to hang out with, Big C, and there's nothing wrong with Jerry Jones hanging out with Tony Romo at some high school championship game down in Texas, but just look at Dak Prescott, knowing that all of this talk of benching a guy who's pretty much crippled, too crippled to play, all that talk is coming from the owner of the team. That's not coming from his coach. That's not coming from his teammates who want to go back to losing again. They're trying to bench him for a guy that's won one playoff game in 12 years, Big C, and that's coming from Jerry Jones. I don't really blame Jerry Jones. I think it's a little bit dyslexic, Big C, and when you're dyslexic, you see things back. He doesn't understand that the Cowboys are actually, 12-2. He thinks they're 2-12, Big C, so that's not Jerry Jones' fault.
He forgot that Romo wasn't playing quarterback. That's the last time they were 2-12, Jones. It was when Romo was playing quarterback, not with Zach. Zach has set a precedence for a rookie quarterback in the NFL, Charlton. As far as what he's done, when you look across the board, who is outplayed? You got to have quarterbacks with more yards. That's the reason for that, Charlton, is because they're not as winning as many games as the Cowboys. So they're coming from behind. He doesn't have to put up the yardage numbers in the game, Charlton, because they're playing in front the whole game. So it's about ball control, controlling the clock. That's what Zach has become a master at. And that's what you need come playoff time. They secured home field advantage, Charlton, basically for the playoffs. So all the games are going to be played in pristine condition down in Texas. So they don't have to worry about going outside in the elements. So you're going to have to come to Zach's house and play under his rules.
You know what's
interesting? And that's the thing that the national media is having a problem with more than anything else, Charlton. It's not that Dallas is winning. Is that they're winning with Zach, and they've never won with Tony at this level.
Well, ironically, Big C, the one thing that can stop the Cowboys from going to the Super Bowl, in my opinion, when you have arguably the best or the hottest quarterback in the league, Big C, and you have the best running back, at least in the NFC, in the Elliott, Big C, these two guys, and you don't even talk about their receiving corps much, but they make good plays, okay? They're catching the ball. They don't have to go the ball 50 yards downfield. They remind me of what Joe Montana did for the 49ers when they were winning Super Bowls, Big C. They were playing the dunk and dink, and they didn't have to always throw the ball 50 yards downfield like a Dan Marino. But just ironically, in the state of Texas, Brock Osweiler for the Houston Texans, actually he was benched. This guy was given more praise and way more money than Dak Prescott, Big C. But let me ask you, what happened with the great Brock Osweiler? He's finally who people thought he was. We've been telling everybody the whole year, even in the OTAs in the offseason, that this guy was a bust. And now everyone's starting to agree now that we're on week 14. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, Charlton, $17.5 million guaranteed this year. That's what happened to Brock Osweiler. Everybody said, well, no, he's going to be great. Houston, Charlton, since 2013 has started 9 different quarterbacks going this week with Savage. He'll be the 9th quarterback since 2013 to start for the Houston Texans. Only the Cleveland Browns have started more quarterbacks. But we've talked about Osweiler all year since he signed with Houston. That he wasn't who people thought he was. He wasn't this great savior. He had no resume. How can you say
he did have a resume. It's called white skin privilege. They want to make this guy great, so they think if they say it enough, that it's going to happen, Big C. That's the same method I'm using trying to win this lotto, Big C. So hopefully I'll get at least what it can be.
Well, when I heard the head coach of mine in his post-game press conference, this is the first time I heard an NFL taken if he can't play.
Yeah.
He finally made that statement on national television, Joe, that the guy can't play. He's just making a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's what he said. I mean, for a head coach to have that kind of the stamina to stand up there and say that,
Yeah.
you know, in the white world, you know, to knock a white quarterback, you know, that was unprecedented.
Yeah.
That the white media has loved all year long. Brock Osweiler, well, it's not his fault. You know, it is his fault. When the guy in a quarter and a half, Johnson, completes 6 passes.
Yeah.
Okay? In a quarter and a half Sunday, he completed 6 passes. 2 of them were interceptions.
He was 6 of 11, 2 interceptions.
He completed 4 passes to his own team, 6 and 2 to the opposing team. And the coach said, enough of this is enough.
He did have 48 yards passing. And think about it. And I want everyone to succeed because I love the sports business. But it's competitive. But I'm talking about all the other networks, from the NFL Network, from ESPN, from Fox Sports to NBC, CBS. All of these guys were saying, I'm talking about from Boomer Esiason to Trent Dilfer, from every single one of them. All of them, Sims, all of these guys that are supposed to know what they're talking about, but maybe they have a bit of CTE, so I can't blame them too much. But they were telling me that this guy, who's a joke of an athlete, is going to be the savior of the NFL, and he couldn't even start over a guy that had a broken neck and a cast on his foot and paid Matt last year. I just think that's a shame, and they were all saying they want to get rid of Prescott to keep this guy. That's a joke. But anyway, going back to that game, it also cost the Jaguars coach his job, Big C. Your thoughts? Was he fired too soon, Big C?
Well, no, but everybody knew Gus Bradley was going to talk. We talked about that since halfway through the season.
Yeah.
That Gus Bradley was out of there. Okay, but, you know, with the Gus Bradley firing, Jonathan, let me take you a step further to the Gus Bradley firing. Where are these draft prognosticators or prognosticators? Kuiper, what's the other guy named McShay?
Kuiper,
you know, these guys were experts on quarterbacks coming out. I believe it was 3 years ago, Blake Bortles was drafted #1 overall.
Yeah.
And they said he was the next great thing in the NFL. He had all the package. He had all the intangibles. He was the next thing to Andrew Luck, and we've seen how lucky he's been lately.
Yeah.
Okay? But Blake Bortles is as much to blame for Gus Bradley's firing as Gus Bradley. You know, and this is what, you know, the coach in Houston saw. He said, I'm not going to get fired behind this damn quarterback. Okay? He said, you know, this guy's making all this money. He's about to get these fired.
I think he was fired because they didn't want to hit 50. Because it looks bad when you have 50 losses on your. And I feel for the guy. They say he's a nice guy, and that's great. Heck, I'm a nice guy too. But if I'm losing like that, they're gonna get rid of me. But it just goes back to, for everyone who tunes into football, you know, make these broadcasters and announcers. You know, put them under the fire scope, too. Put us under the scope. If we're wrong, call us out on it. You can put us at Charlton on Twitter, at Yes Charlton on Twitter. And everybody wants to know who has the most accurate teams and who has the most accurate predictions. I think this is a fun business. You know, it's jovial, but we want to see who's stealing money and who's a little bit accurate, Big C. So I want to just make sure people keep that in mind. Also, the Baltimore Ravens. What a great game against the Philadelphia Eagles. I do admire the Eagles for going for 2 at the end, but the great Carson Wentz threw the ball low, had the ball tipped, and again, it was incomplete at the goal line when they went for 2. Now, I applaud them for going for 2, but when you look at that, Big C, the Ravens and the Eagles played a great game, but I think the Carson Wentz right now, since winning those first 3 games over, and Cleveland was one of those wins, Big C, I think they've only won like 2 games and they lost 9, Big C. Your thoughts?
They've been on a downward spiral, Johnson. You know, the defense played lights out, and people gave him credit for just those victories by himself.
Yeah.
But the defense was outstanding, Johnson. They were one of the top 2-3 defenses in the NFL over the first 4 weeks of the season. But they've been on this slide, and people saw the weaknesses on that defensive side of the ball, as well as saw on the offensive side of the ball that they didn't have much diversity in what they were doing. They had no running game to start with, Johnson. And when Matthews got nicked, that little bit of running game they had went to the wayside. They realized that he was going to do a lot of checkdowns. So they play a lot of more 1-0 and press coverage against the Eagles. They don't have to play that 2 deep safety because he's not a threat going down the middle of the field, Johnson. You'll see a lot of single safety up top against the Eagles. But Wentz has had problems, you know, understanding the complicated defenses of the NFL. His timing has just not been there.
Yeah.
That comes, you know, part of the poor mechanics that he has that he's going to have to work on. You got nothing but former quarterbacks working with him, and they still can't work through those mechanics. So, he is what he's supposed to be as a rookie quarterback, as the number 2 overall pick in the draft, not a fourth-round quarterback. Those guys find success, but the number 1 and 2 pick, together this year, Charlton, they won't get a half dozen victories.
Yeah, I agree. And then you look at for rushing, Matthews had 20 carries, 128 yards. And then in the passing game, Wentz was 22 of 42. Through that interception, had 170 yards passing, Big C. Flacco was 16 of 30.
What you just said, 22 completions and don't get 200 yards.
No.
You're not going to win many NFL games. That's Brock Osweiler's numbers, okay?
Yeah.
When you can't get 200 yards passing as an NFL quarterback, people can say, well, he has to have better tools. No. You throw the ball 42 times, you said?
Yeah.
And 22 completions at 170 yards?
Yeah.
That's pedestrian, Charlton. Way pedestrian.
Yeah, the interception and the batter down. And, of course, we want him to succeed. But I'm just asking you guys, in the media that went out from the NFL Network, ESPN, Fox Sports, CBS, NBC, they were all saying, and especially Trent Dilfer said this guy plays like he's a 5-year veteran. And I just wonder, what film was he watching, Big C? Because
he was watching some of his own film, Charlton. As a 5-year veteran, that's what he looked like.
They gave him so much praise. Joe Montana was getting his cleats out the closet, Big C. He thought he could come back and play. He could at least get 180 yards passing, Big C. Another big game is the Atlanta Falcons, Matt Ryan playing against what looked like the 49ers playing flag football or touch football on defense, 41-13 in that game down in the great city of Atlanta. They're going to have a new stadium, I believe, opening next year, Big C. But Kaepernick passing was 20 of 33, 183 yards, and Ryan was 17 of 23, 286 yards. And I'm just looking at so many players on the 49ers defense. They simply don't tackle, Big C. Your thoughts on that game, Big C?
Jonathan, that's one of the most abysmal defenses I've seen in the NFL in a long, long time. When you have players who don't want contact, who shy away from it. On defense, it's about tenacity, Charlton. It's about inflicting your will on somebody else. That's not what you get with the San Francisco 49ers. The running back and watching that game, they knew if they got past the linebackers, they weren't going to get touched.
Yeah.
The defensive backs are like, hey, I'm not into this. And that's what they showed. It was embarrassing.
Yeah.
This is a team, if the NFL ever want to find somebody for conduct detrimental to the league, they should find all the defensive backs on the 49ers. That's conduct detrimental to the league. It was pathetic.
Yeah.
And I've seen that multiple times this year, Charlton. They've given up 100 yards to every team's running back this year.
Yeah.
Every team has had a running back gain over 100 yards on the ground versus the 49ers. That's one away from the NFL record, Charlton. So when you think about guys who don't want to play defense, go to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what Chip Kelly's looking at. People talking about him as an offensive guru. They couldn't even gain 100 yards on the ground, Charlton. They gained, last week 236 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
They didn't get 100 yards. Atlanta gained 239 against them.
Well, ironically, even the great Eric Dickerson, he saw how porous that defense is. He got his old cleats out the closet. Eric Dickerson talking about making a comeback at least for this game against San Francisco coming up, Big C. In another game that happened, it was a better game than a lot of people thought it was going to be because I think the Bears have really found a quarterback in Matt Barkley, and that just shows the contrast between Goff and Wentz and Barkley coming out of Modern Day High School in Santa Ana and then playing at USC. Under Pete Carroll, under the tutelage of Carson Palmer and a lot of other good quarterbacks, Big C. They took the Packers down to the wire. It was the Packers 30-27 over the Bears. That game was played in frozen temperatures as well, 61,000 fans on hand. But just looking at the numbers, Big C, when I look at Rodgers, he was 19 of 31, 252 yards. Barkley was 30 of 43. He did throw 3 interceptions, but the ball's cold, and he had 362 yards passing. Could you imagine if they found a running game and a better defense for the Bears? They would have beaten the Packers just today, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the thing about the Bears, Justin, they're not even going to stay with Matt Barkley. I guarantee you they'll go out trying to find a free agent quarterback. They're not going to find anybody that's played better than Barkley in the last 3 or 4 games than what he's played. Yeah. You have to give the guy a chance. He's been around. He's understood a couple different offenses in the NFL. But to play in those type of frigid conditions, to play at the level. And you think about the bargain basement price that they got him for compared to a Jay Cutler's contract, to a Brock Osweiler's contract. This is a guy that can play. He's playing for, Zach Prescott money.
Yeah.
And when you think about an opponent They're going to take the employment part of it. You can cut every quarterback's salary in the NFL, Charlton, 50 to 60%. They would still play. You can sit there and say, well, they got to sit back there and take a beating.
Yeah.
But linemen offensively and defensively does not take a beating during the game, Charlton.
Yeah.
When you walk out, your hands are gnawed. You know, you got dislocated elbows and, you know, bursa sacks bursted on your elbows and in your shoulder. And so linemen take a beating all the time. Yes, a quarterback makes a lot of money, but if you're making that kind of money, Charlton, you should always win 12 games a year minimum.
Oh, big
You can't be out there as a quarterback making $100 million, Charlton, and not making the playoffs, taking your team to 8-8 or less.
Yeah, I agree, Big C. And a lot of people would take a lot less money because what are they going to do once they don't play in the league? I think, again, it's just this hype. There was a boxing movie back in the day, and I think it was called The Great White Hype. And I want to bring it up because it's so blatant and how as good as Dak Prescott is, every single media outlet was saying, let's bench this guy to bring in the white guy. And I know if they were just honest, like the coach at Houston when he got rid of Brock Osweiler for stealing money, if they were just honest, they would just say they want to have a white guy so they can be a part of that boardroom, that good old boy network that we all did not understand when Jim Crow was so big, Big C, because we were always excluded from those boardrooms. But that's what the NFL was. They want a white guy that touches the ball all the time to make him the highest paid player. Now, anyone just challenges, why would Dak Prescott, with what he did, setting a record as a passer, as a quarterback, as a rookie quarterback, being challenged and scrutinized about his capability of leading a team to the Super Bowl? The only thing that would keep the Dallas Cowboys out of the Super Bowl this year would be injury or Jerry Jones. It's not somebody's defense, Big C. And speaking of defense, I want to say this is sponsored by United Labor Guaranteed, issued $100,000 life insurance with no medical questions. We are also endorsed by the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. We work with all of the unions under the AFL-CIO, and we're also looking to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers. Tweet out the Charlton and Big C Sports at Yes Charlton on Twitter. We're also trying to put people back to work. But Big C, speaking of putting people back to work, and we talked about some of these quarterbacks who are stealing money, and I love seeing guys get paid. But I want to see it fair because the teams with the best running backs oftentimes win the Super Bowl because of their running games, not because of what they're doing throwing the football, Big C. When you look at the Giants and the Lions, that game was billed as a playoff caliber game. It was the Giants beat the Lions 17-6. There was a controversial call in that game where Beckham didn't catch a ball, but they gave it to him anyway. I just want to get your thoughts on the Giants. I know they're playing very good football right now, but that was a game the Lions could have won as well. Your thoughts, Big C?
Yes, the Giants are playing excellent football, Charlton, playing well above everyone's expectations. But also the Detroit Lions, Charlton, with Matthew Stafford, we talked about him having an injured hand. How well would he perform? And it showed that he didn't have the capability with that bad index finger, Charlton, being able to throw the ball with much velocity. You know, the Giants have developed a running game, which is critical this time of the year. You think about the Lions having to go outside, Charlton. When you're outside the elements, when you're a dome team this time of the year, you're not that comfortable playing outside. And yet, everybody will say, well, both teams are cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one team's a little more used to the cold than the other team.
That's true.
You know, just because you live in Detroit don't mean you're outside in Detroit. So, you know, the Giants are always outside in the elements this time of the year. This is a team that has become weathered. So they know the tacticality of playing outside this time of the year. And when you get some warm weather receiver coming outside in the cold, they're trying to get to the sideline to get to the heated benches. That's where they're trying to get, John. They're not all that interested in a 12-play drive. Yeah. And you'll see that. Look at the teams, Charlton, that can sustain drives in the cold inclement weather. When you can put together a 10 or 12-play drive, you're going to win the game because that opposing team, Charlton, has now become frigid, offensively and defensively.
Well, speaking of frigid, there's a lot of talk about should a coach be fired, should a coach get the chance to play out, whether it's down in Jacksonville, no matter where it is, Big C. The Buffalo Bills under Ryan, they had a 33-13 win over Hugh Jackson and the Cleveland Browns. They still had 66,000 fans in Buffalo watching that game. And for the Bills to win 33-13, we know that Cleveland has some issues. When you look at the passing game, for Cleveland, Griffin was 17 of 28, 196 yards. And then Taylor for the Bills was 17 of 24, 174 yards. But there's no need for any talk to be of Ryan as a coach losing his job. They were knocking on the door of the playoffs last year, Big C. they could still have a way to finish out 9-7. I know they want to fire everybody, but you got to give coaches a chance. At least 3 years is my thinking. If not, who wants to go in there knowing that you don't even believe in your coach to stick by them? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I want y'all to look at this from this perspective. We looked at Gus Bradley being fired yesterday after the game on the way back to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Jacksonville has a coaching opening, okay, Charlton?
Yeah.
The top two names on that list, ironically, are Jeff Fisher and Rex Ryan. Those are the top two names on the Jacksonville search list. You got two guys who can't win anywhere, and you talk about bringing them into a losing organization and making losing the organization better. This is what I don't get, Charlton, when you talk about that. I mean, Ryan's been around in a few places.
Yeah.
You know, he hasn't dominated anywhere. He made the playoffs a couple of years with the Jets. With Mark Sanchez. Everybody said Mark Sanchez was no quarterback. He took to the AFC Championship games 2 years. How many quarterbacks have done that, Charlton? Consecutive years to the AFC Championship game. All these guys that are making $100 million, they haven't done it back-to-back years. So they knocked Mark Sanchez because he was a minority quarterback.
Yeah.
That's what they did. They got rid of him. But when you think about that, Jeff Fisher's already in the job, consideration.
How? But how? That's called white skin privilege. He doesn't even need the Rooney Rule when you can. I mean, there was a quote that Jeff Fisher, they were asking him about his losses. I think he tied one coach for the most losses.
He's tied Dan Reeves with all-time loss record in the NFL.
Yeah, well, he said he doesn't look at the losses. Okay, so maybe that's why he gets paid good at night for stealing money. It's not stealing money if they give it to you, from what I understand. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he doesn't worry about the losses because he had guaranteed money, Jonathan. That was the thing with Jeff Fisher. Yeah. He had guaranteed money. So he didn't concern himself. He said, there'll always be a coaching opportunity for me, whichever direction I decide to go. If I want to go back to college, I can get a job, which he could. He could get a job as a head coach in college. He would gladly be accepted. Yeah. He'll most likely, like I said, end up in Jacksonville. He and Ryan are the top two guys on the search right now in Jacksonville.
Ironically enough, I know the sports world is a competitive world. I'm not naive. I mean, sometimes I'm naive when I drink 2 sips of that moonshine when you say drink one, Big C, I can handle it. But as a Caucasian coach, do they understand that? Do they feel they need the Rooney Rule, or do they think it's a joke, Big C?
They think the Rooney Rule should be outlawed, Charlton, because what that does, they figure that it holds up some of them from having an opportunity to have a job. Yeah. But it holds up all the black coaches, Charlton, from having a job. When you look at it across the slate, most African American coaches in the NFL are all playoff caliber teams. Yeah. So they don't get a chance to interview. And when they're in the playoffs, Charlton, they're conducting all these interviews for the coaches that have been dismissed already. I mean, we've had 2 thus far gone. So how long into the playoff season, Charlton, are they going to wait to find a head coach? They're not going to wait that long, Charlton, because they call it draft preparation, free agency preparation. That's what they're looking at. So they're not going to go out and wait on one of these top-flight African-American head coaches that are deep into the playoffs and say, hey, we want to interview him. Yeah. They're not going to wait that long. So they missed the opportunity once again. But, Jonathan, we even have quality African-American head coaches in college ranks that don't get an opportunity to get an NFL coaching job. And they're sitting there talking about college coaches. Saban names always popping up. Jimbo Fisher, other coaches like that. They're saying, let's get these guys an opportunity. What happened to the African-American coaches that have winning programs on the college level, Charlton, regardless of the level? Yeah. When we look around, we look at Maroney, who just took over the interim head coach in Jacksonville. Yeah. He coached at Syracuse before he got fired last, okay? Right. When was the last time Syracuse had a winning record? That's the reason why he was fired. But now he's the interim head coach in the NFL. After being nothing but a losing coach in college.
Well, let me ask you about this next game coming up. The Pittsburgh Steelers, 24-20 over the Cincinnati Bengals. They actually had to come behind. Big Ben had a great game. But I know Marvin Lewis is under the hot seat because he's only made the playoffs like 8 or 9 years in a row, Big Z. But even the great Mike Tomlin, there was talk about him being replaced if the Steelers don't make the playoffs this year. All he's done is gone to the Super Bowl, Big Z. As a different coach, your thoughts, Big Z?
That's what you call it, the game privilege, Jonathan. The success of winning as an African-American coach is never enough. You got to do more. You only won? Damn, that wasn't good enough for us. Yeah. We'd rather have one of us that lose and say that's a success. He's in a what it's going to be. You look at Mike Tomlin, who's done nothing but make the playoffs in Pittsburgh and a couple Super Bowls, but, it's not enough, Charlton. It's not enough. So when you start sitting around and you start finding ways to fire an African-American coach, and I'm talking about on any level, Charlton, it becomes excuseville. It's basically what, like we had Winsville, it's excuseville to fire an African-American head coach. When you look at the landscape of athletes on college and professional teams, and you see the number of African Americans, and you don't get the mentorship from a coach, you don't get the social structure from a coach that they recognize what these players go through and what they live in. You say, well, a white guy can facilitate that even though he never drives in that neighborhood that they came from. This is what you have to look at and from a societal perspective. This is like politics. How can a cabinet full of billionaires care about middle class or lower class America? They don't never drive to that neighborhood. So when you put your cabinet together as the president-elect now of the United States, and it's $1 billion cabinet, who cares about the person making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year? John, we can always talk about the six-figure people making $250,000 $500,000 a year. What about that average American who's making $30,000 to $50,000 a year? How much are they going to be concerned with them talking about creating great opportunity for? They're not, Charlton. Those are the left out in America. Those are the people that are scraping by. And then think about those who are making less than $20,000. How are you going to affect their lives? And that's what we look at with African American coaches, Charlton, not getting an opportunity in any sport, whether it's baseball, basketball, football. And definitely you're not going to get it in soccer and hockey.
And I think that's part of because people don't talk about it as much. We're going to keep talking about the Big C because it just makes sense. And I also want to just get down to another game. The Colts 34-6 over the Vikings. The Vikings had a poor performance. I am impressed that Adrian Peterson came back and played after having another knee injury. But this guy works out so hard, and whatever he's doing to get back on the football field, just impressed with him as an athlete. To have that type of mentality, Big C, to not let anything stop him. Obviously, I was talking about being around these UFC fighters and how hard these guys train. When I look at someone like an Adrian Peterson, football's a different game because unlike an MMA fight, which is tough, you can kick, you can grab, you can choke, you can get people to the ground, but you don't have 300-pound men trying to take you out, sometimes 3 or 4 at one time, Big C. Your thoughts on the mindset of a guy like an Adrian Peterson, not only to come back from an injury, but just to have the focus to get right back into the game that caused the injury in the first place, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Jonathan, I don't look at him as a dedicated athlete. I look at him as a dedicated person. I look at the velocity that his mind works with to dedicate himself to be as good as he can be. You would like that from all athletes. We talked about Mark Oswald early in the program, where, if he had Adrian Peterson's dedication, maybe he would be a decent starting quarterback in the NFL. Maybe he would complete 68 to 70% of his passes. Maybe he would throw more touchdowns and interceptions, Johnson. Maybe he would lead his team to victories and wouldn't get benched. But you don't get that mentality. You think about it, Johnson. African American players have to work that hard to prove that they can play. You get a white luxury status quarterback who doesn't have to do anything, walks out on the field, got a little pudge in front of him and all that because he's not dedicated. But if you took quarterbacks in the NFL and had them work at the level of an Adrian Peterson, where running backs get no money compared to a quarterback, whose careers are shortened because they have to carry such a load and are expendable, as they say nowadays, because they're African American, they're expendable. You get another one even cheaper. And that goes around all the time, Johnson. But, that dedication, and it goes unrewarded. He's out there trying to help his team to get better for his team. And his team doesn't work at the level he does. Think about if Sam Bradford was as dedicated as Adrian Peterson as far as being in shape. How much better a quarterback he would be. But you're not getting that, Johnson, across the board with players. An African-American player has to continuously prove himself to work out at that level, because when you look at the receivers in the NFL, Johnson, 90% of them are African-American. And look at the highlight shows every weekend after the game, every Monday night. What are they? They're stapled with African-American receivers making all these tremendous catches because they work at their craft so greatly. They make the white quarterbacks look good, making these one-handed catches, these diving catches. was a tremendous catch by the receiver, which it was. The quarterback put him out there vulnerable.
And see, that's the thing I want to bring up because, we're two African-American on Big C Sports on iHeart Radio Network, and we know if we had to go to the mainstream, they probably would not give us a job. But I like competing against those guys because we take care of our own program, Big C, and I love challenging whatever they put out there to be the sports leader or whatever they call it, and then you just say things like they were all pumping Brock Osweiler, and I want everyone to succeed. But now that they show that what you've been seeing for the whole year, Big C, even last year, has been vindicated and validated, where are these guys that are going to come on and say that they were wrong? They don't even come out and say that they missed it, Big C. They keep talking as if they don't even understand that they were the same guys pumping this guy when he gets benched by a coach who says, I can't put up with this garbage. And this is the same guy that they were all praising. Now there's no talk about they being wrong, especially guys like Trent Dilfer. Will you ever hear outside of Trent Dilfer saying, yeah, you're right, Steve. You're right, Steve. Will he ever come out and say that he was wrong for time, Big C?
Well, Charles, what they're going to do is they're going to question O'Brien, the head coach. They're not going to say anything about Osweiler. They're going to question O'Brien, the head coach. Let me give you another example, Charlton. What was the greatest year Tom Brady ever had as a quarterback?
It seems like it might be now, but there's a time they went undefeated until they lost in the Super Bowl.
The season that they went undefeated.
Yeah.
That was his greatest statistical year as an NFL quarterback, okay? What did he have special that year?
Great receiver, running back.
Randy Moss.
Yeah.
He had Randy Moss. Randy Moss set a couple records. A yardage record and a touchdown record, okay?
Yeah.
Since Randy Moss, has Tom Brady been able to duplicate that success? He's been to Super Bowls, but he hasn't duplicated the personal success he had that season without a great receiver in Randy Moss.
I agree.
And he's had Gronkowski. Everybody's calling him the greatest tight end of all time.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have Randy Moss.
Yeah.
Okay? That's a big difference.
So you're saying having talented wide receivers, you think Joe Montana would have been as great without the great Jerry Rice and John Taylor, Big C? Is that what you're trying to say?
Okay. What did Joe Montana do in Kansas City?
Yeah.
Okay?
He got a concussion.
All right?
He got a concussion.
You want to talk about how great he was in San Francisco
Yeah.
with Jerry Rice? What did he do in Kansas City? All right? Nothing.
Yeah, that's the one thing about you. They're trying to tell you who to love, Big C, and here you come with the facts again. I mean, Joe was only as good as the receivers catching the ball. He also had a chance to throw to a guy named Roger Craig, who also rushed and caught for over 1,000 yards on the same season, Big C. So it's always about who you're surrounded by, but I think Jerry Rice had more success than Joe Montana did. When Jerry Rice left the 49ers, he went to a Super Bowl again with the Raiders. Joe Montana never went to one, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he also went to another one with the 49ers with a guy named Steve Young. So, Jerry Rice took a lot of people to the Super Bowl, on his coattail.
Yeah.
You even think about the Dallas Cowboys or Troy Aikman, as great as he was. He had two guys that made him great. A guy named Michael Irvin and another named Emmitt Smith.
Yeah.
You can talk about the cast that he had around, but without those two guys, Charlton, he was nothing. I mean, you look up and down the list and quarterbacks throughout the years of their success. John Elway, when you think about the receiving core that he had down there, he had Smith and he had Sharp.
Yeah.
Those guys made him great, along with Davis in the backfield. Without those guys, and John Elway never won a Super Bowl. Think about it. He was there on many other occasions. But without Davis, Sharp, these guys, he could not win a Super Bowl, Charles. He couldn't. So people can always talk about the quarterback being great as he is great, doing this and that. But without these particular receivers, Charlton, they do not win Super Bowls. They will always get the credit and the MVP. Look at Eli Manning. The 2 games he won on bad passes, Charlton, in the Super Bowl. These receivers get no credit for those tremendous catches that they made.
Yep, that's a good point, Big C. And speaking of good points, this final segment is sponsored by One Life America Life Insurance. We're the leaders in the country when it comes to final expense. Also by BeneathThisWingsFoundation.org. Contact Cynthia Evans when it comes to entertainment and CYNN Entertainment. She's the best when it comes to entertainment in the country, Big C. Also, I want to bring up another game that I thought was very intriguing for the fact that we just talked about the great Tom Brady and hasn't been hitting the same numbers without Randy Moss, but a 16-3 win over the Broncos kind of exposes Denver for how they're missing something. And I know they won the Super Bowl last year with their defense. their defense is still good, but their offense dropped a lot of passes yesterday in a cold environment. That's only the third win by Brady over Denver, and when it comes to Brady, he was 16. He only completed 16 of 32. He had 185 yards, subpar performance. And then Simeon, he was not. I mean, he's a little bit better. He had a 25 of 41 pick, 280 yards, but a lot of drops, Big C. So even though Brady won that game, it wasn't because of Tom Brady. It's because Denver dropped a lot of balls. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, Jonathan, you said Denver was missing something. They're missing the playoffs this year is what they're going to miss.
Yeah, that's good.
They're going to join Carolina in those lounge chairs watching the game, you know. You think about it. Two teams that were in the Super Bowl last year going to miss the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
But the problem with Denver, Charlton, they have no running game, okay?
Yeah.
They didn't sign Simeon. They didn't make him a starting quarterback for him to be throwing the ball 40 times a game. That's what he's averaging, Charlton, 40 passes a game.
Yeah.
That's more than what Peyton Manning was managing. They figured they would make him the starting quarterback, Charlton. He would throw the ball 20 to 25 times a game, and the running game would control the offense.
Yeah.
But that has gone by the wayside, Charlton, and this is what we talk about, and we've preached about it all year long. The African-American running back that doesn't get any money.
Yeah.
But the white quarterback who gets overpaid. And without that dominant African-American running back, these white quarterbacks look very simple.
Well,
and that's what we had with Simeon. When Anderson was healthy,
yeah.
the first 3 or 4 games of the season, Simeon looked like a world beater. People thought no one would be able to touch Denver. They were just going to go right back and repeat back-to-back Super Bowl performances.
Yeah.
But Anderson got hurt, Charlton. Their dominant running back who had a stellar game in last year's Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Had no consideration for MVP. But now that he's gone and Simeon has the workload on his shoulder, he looks like a straining quarterback. That receiving core, Charlton, is still there from last year.
Yeah.
The difference is the quarterback and the running back has changed.
Well,
and so without that dominant running back,
yeah.
this quarterback doesn't stand a chance.
Well, that's very true, Big C. Also, you look at the Dolphins as we finish up on the NFL. The Dolphins 34, the Jets 13, and that was a game that was played in New York in front of over 70,000 fans there at Big C. But the Dolphins, actually, they can turn it on or turn it off, it seems. I know the Jets are struggling this year, but just your thoughts on the Dolphins and what they're trying to do. They're still behind New England. They're a young team, but they show a lot of promise at times. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Dolphins played their best quarterback this last Sunday, Jonathan Moore. He's their best quarterback. I mean, Tannehill gets all the money and the publicity, but Moore is the better of the two quarterbacks. He's more NFL experience, plus he understands defenses a lot better. Plus, he knows that he has a running back.
Yeah.
You know, Tannehill, when you're young and cocky, you want to be the star. Moore understood that when the Dolphins were winning, his guy was running. And he let a giant run, and he passes when necessitated. He finished the weekend in the top 5 passing for his NFL quarterbacks, you know, in the QBR rating. But he understood the running game would help getting there, Charlton, and that's what he executed. And the Dolphins just dominated the Jets, Charlton.
Yeah, he was 12 of 18, one pick, but 236 yards, and had a great game. And you look at Petty of the Jets, he was 20 of 36, 2 picks, and 235, Big C. And also another game as we get closer to the game I really want to ask you about because it clinched a division for one team, at least a playoff spot for one team. The Saints 48 in a shootout over the Cardinals, 48-41. The great Drew Brees and the great Carson Palmer. Even though both teams are not going to go anywhere near the playoffs, Big C, just a great throwing the football again. You had Brees 27 of 40. And he had 289 yards. And then Palmer, I apologize, 389 for Brees. Big C, I need some glasses, Big C. My new glasses I bring out for me. I don't know if it's the moonshine I drank with my glasses, but these numbers, they keep moving around. I feel like me and Jerry Jones are not looking at the right numbers. He wants to bench Dak Prescott, and I can't tell a 2 from a 3, Big C, but I'm going to keep trying. I also want to say a great game again, passing by the great Palmer. He had over 300 yards passing as well. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, you know, this was a shootout in the desert that, you know, you would like to see these two teams in playoff competition, but their defenses just won't let that happen. But, you know, when you talk about entertainment, these are quarterbacks who went out and earned their paycheck. You know, they didn't put on an Osweiler performance. They didn't put on a Simeon performance, Charlton.
Yeah.
They went out and played. I mean, you know, wide open attacks. You know when Drew Brees show up as a secondary, you got to get in your back. Tell him when he's he's coming out throwing. You know, and they sprinkle a little ground game into that. Johnson has just been a dominant back all year from the Cardinals.
Yeah.
You know, but when players. I mean, was he talking to Brian Kelly? Because he started calling players out. For lack of performance. But you're the coach, and at times, as you're the coach, I don't see Chip Kelly calling anybody out in San Francisco on defense, and they don't even play.
No, they
they put on a uniform and they don't even have to take a shower when the game's over.
Yeah, have you seen that commercial with the great Bo Jackson and the great Brian Bosworth? It's a Tampa Bowl football game, and Bo's driving some type of car, and he goes on the field to pick up Brian Bosworth, and Brian Bosworth says, "Hey, thanks for not running me over." And Bo said, "A second time," or something like that. That's how the 49ers defense is looking. Your thoughts, Big Z?
It's an embarrassment to professional football. It would be an embarrassment to high school football to have a secondary that played that way, Charlton. You talk about cupcakes. These are cupcakes without frosting. They have no sweetness to them. They are soft as a marshmallow.
Yeah.
I mean, it is bad. It's embarrassing. And like I said, the NFL should fine the entire secondary of the 49ers for conduct.
It's not the secondary's fault. The guy who you blame is the guy who's getting these. Trent Baalke must have some good relationship with friends. It's like even the great Bill Walsh. He would get rid of guys in their prime. He did it when guys were in their prime because he did
not. Who does San Francisco have in their prime? Nobody.
Yeah, but it's Baalke. Baalke's the guy putting these teams together, and they tried to throw Kaepernick under the bus the last couple seasons. He's the brightest star. The brightest star they have on that team, Big C. He's one of the few guys that even went to a Super Bowl, Big C.
But you talk about quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Who was out there in the draft that's better than Colin Kaepernick? Nobody. You can talk about Deshaun Watson. Everybody's talking about this kid out of North Carolina who started 1 year as a college quarterback, and he couldn't even win his conference, Charlton, playing 1 year as a college quarterback. So how is he going to come in and rule the NFL? But, these are the experts, Kiper and McShay, saying he's that good. Because he's white. He's big, he's white. So, he's better than the guy who was second, runner up the Heisman 2 years in a row with Watson, who's the best quarterback. And why would you want to draft a quarterback and bring him into San Francisco and you have no tools? You need to go in San Francisco and draft 4 defensive backs, or at least get 4 in free agency.
Oh, yeah.
Some kids who want to play. That's what you need to do. And you need to find somebody who can rush fast. Since Aldon Smith has left, I don't think they sacked the quarterback more than 3 times.
Well, Big C, that's a very good point. Before we touch on our last and final NFL game, Big C, I just want to say this final segment is sponsored by Charlton and Big C Sports. We actually have a sports calendar coming out, Big C, and it would be for 2017. And we have some women that were actually in Playboy magazine that are going to be featured, and Charlton and Big C Sports calendar coming out for 2017. And I'm really proud of all the hard work that's going into it. So we just want to have people look ahead for that. Also, you can order apparel from hats to shirts and jerseys that are going to be the Big C Sports logo, and that's going to be produced by Team IP and G5 Textiles, 2 of the largest producers of sports memorabilia in the United States. We have 48 of the top 50 companies that can actually build merchandising for us. But Big C, the last thing I want to get into is this football game that was the Oakland Raiders having to get this win just to get back into the playoffs for the first time since 2002. And ironically, they did it against the San Diego Chargers. And both teams are unstable in the fact that both teams are talking about moving to relocate their team, whether it's Las Vegas or whether it's Los Angeles. But what a great game put on by the Raiders, especially their defense coming down the stretch. Offensively, the great Rivers and Carr, they were not that impressive throwing the football. I think when you look at that, even though they give a lot of credit to the quarterbacks, Carr had a 213 yards passing, 19 of 30, and he had a pick. And then Rivers, he was 17 of 31 pick and 206 yards. But I'm just impressed with the way this Raiders defense under Ken Norton Jr., who's an African-American coach, defensive coach, he was also under fire at the beginning of this year. There were people saying, let him go. But because McKenzie has stuck with him and Jack Del Rio has stuck with him, the Raiders have won. They're back in the playoffs for the first time since 2002. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, when you talk about Ken Norton Jr., this is a guy who's been nothing but a winner his entire life. I believe he had Super Bowl rings with the Dallas Cowboys, San Francisco 49ers, Seattle Seahawks, as a coach. So he understands winning. He understands what great defense is. And so he has a leniency. And when we talk about African Americans not getting opportunities, how does he not get an opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL when we talk about a defensive-minded league? Los Angeles.
Los
So that
Angeles,
move back to Los Angeles would bring back the original Chargers, Charlton, if they go there. You know, they're still up in the air whether the Raiders will end up in Vegas. That's a big move. I know the money's in Vegas. If a stadium is to be built, they can build it there. It's about the land where it's going to go is what it comes down to more than anything else. Do they want it out in the middle of nowhere? Do they want it downtown? But, you know, nevertheless, the franchise has rebounded. Best record since 2002, Charlton, since they went to the Super Bowl last time. They're going to be in the playoffs. That's a great thing for the NFL to have teams of the Raiders and the Cowboys be significant and getting into the playoffs. It means that the old days of the NFL are back where the interest is there.
Yeah, that's true, Big C. And I tell you, no matter what you like, whether it's UFC, we had a great event up here in Northern California with the UFC on Fox, and congratulations again, Uriah Faber. We'll be having that interview coming up pretty soon, and just to mention all of the great fighters that fight and train hard in the world of the UFC and the MMA, really appreciate that. I believe we'll also have an interview with Dana White coming up in the early part of next year, and on Big C Sports, on iHeart Radio Network. Also, so many great things going to making the show work. I really appreciate you, Big C, and all your great knowledge. For all of the people who are trying to get into the sports business, you know, you just got to go and do it, Big C. The last thing we'll close out with, the Monday night game tonight, we have the Carolina Panthers with the great Cam Newton going against the Redskins and the great Kirk Cousins. Your thoughts on this game tonight, Big C?
Well, you know, this is a game that the Redskins desperately need to win. Ironically, Carolina's mathematically still in the playoffs. If you look at it, who would have thought that? But, you know, the Redskins have to win out, as well as Carolina, to get into the playoffs. You know, people have talked about the tremendous numbers that Cousins has put up as a quarterback. He's only about 955 yards away from reaching 5,000 on the season, John.
Yeah.
But that's a dubious number to reach if you don't make the playoffs. It shows that you were doing a lot of chasing.
Yeah.
They're going to have to be able to run the ball. Kuechly's going to be out tonight for Carolina once again, concussion protocol. You know, this is a game where, you know, you got Josh Norman, who was a part of the Panthers Super Bowl run last year, playing quarterback. I think he will get into a little tiff tonight with some of the Panthers receivers, and he'll be challenged like him. But, you know, this is one of those games that, you know, he can get that one or two penalties that can cost the Redskins, Charlton. So this will be a closely fought battle tonight, Charlton. And, you know, it's up in there. I don't see a clear dominant team on either side of it.
Well, Big C, I tell you, I appreciate so much of what you're saying, and it actually makes a lot of sense. No matter who you are and what you're doing in this world, if you want to make something happen, you got to go out and make it happen. And I want to tell you, there's also an incident of so many people having to say, you know what, we were right or we were wrong. We don't care if you agree with everything we're saying. We just ask you to research it. We also say research every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide on the iHeart Radio Network. Follow Charlton and Big C Sports, the number one sports show in the universe, and we're the only sports show that does it freestyle. That means no teleprompter and no producer in your ear. You can follow Charlton and Big C Sports, real sports talk, and we ask you every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We also say there's never any reason to ever hit a woman. No excuse for any violence against any woman. If you see any woman in trouble, just call 911. Don't make her go through that garbage ball alone. And as we always tell you, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.